Contracts are a very important part of our business. So it's important to understand the 4 elements of contract formation. The first element or requirement for a contract is what we call legal capacity, referring that the people entering into this agreement are 18 years or older. Now, there are some exceptions to having to be 18 years or older to have this first element of contract formation. The first exception is if you happen to be under 18 but married. Maybe you're 16 and you're in a state where they allow you to get married, you're considered able to contract if you're married. If you can get married, you can get divorced. Unfortunately, if you're divorced at 17, you'd still be able to contract without having to be 18 if you were married or divorced. Also, if you're in the military, even if you're under 18, you're considered able to contract, the first element of contract formation. Now, if you've been emancipated by the court, meaning a court has actually determined that you can contract as an adult, as someone 18 years or older, and you see this a lot with children that their parents are spending their money because they're famous Hollywood people, or I remember when I was growing up, Gary Coleman, the parents were stealing his money, so he went to the court and he asked to be emancipated by the court, treated as an adult, as 18 old, so he could do his own deals. So these are some exceptions to the first element of contract formation, which is having to be 18 or older and to have legal capacity. The second element of contract formation is we have to agree to something. We must have some kind of mutual consent or meeting of the minds. We must agree to something. Now, in our business of real estate, this mutual consent or meeting of the minds is best evidenced by an offer, right? You want to buy a house, so you make an offer and acceptance of that offer by the seller. But it's important to know that that acceptance must be under exact terms and conditions as presented. So if you offer to buy that person's house for $1 million and you tell them you'd like to close escrow because you want to move in quickly, in 10 days you would like to close of escrow, and you really love his refrigerator, so you want him to throw in the fridge, even though the fridge would probably be considered personal property. And they say, fantastic, we love that offer, and we accept, except we don't want to give you the fridge. Well, that's not acceptance under exact terms and conditions. Because if that was acceptance under exact terms and conditions, then you would agree to giving him the fridge. So what this is done by the seller saying, I will not give you the refrigerator, he's canceling that initial offer and replacing it with a new one that says no refrigerator, $1 million, and 10-day close of escrow. And when that happens, we call that a counter offer. So what now the seller has done is he has negated that initial offer, canceled that initial offer, replaced it with his offer, which is now a counter offer, which does not include the refrigerator. Now, the buyer can either agree under exact terms and conditions, no refrigerator, $1 million, 10 days, or say, I really love that refrigerator. How about I offer you $1 million and 500? 10-day close of escrow, and to include the fridge. So now the buyer is canceling that offer and replacing it with another offer, which is another counter. And these counters, as a lot of realtors know, can go back and forth and back and forth, and sometimes you lose deals for the littlest thing. But it needs to be accepted under the exact terms and conditions. conditions as presented. Otherwise, we don't have acceptance. But once we do have acceptance, now we say we have mutual consent, which is the second element of contract formation. Now, the third element required for contract formation is that whatever we're negotiating must be for a lawful, sorry, my pen's starting to go down, must be for a lawful purpose, meaning legal. We can't have a contract for you to hire me to kill your husband so that you get the life insurance money. And then I don't kill him, and you say, Armando, you owe me $2 million because if you would have killed him, I would have gotten a $2 million tax-free death benefit. So, no, we can't contract unless it's for a lawful purpose. So the third element of contract formation, it needs to be for something legal. It needs to be for a lawful purpose. And the fourth element is we need to provide sufficient consideration. Sufficient consideration. And what is consideration? Well, consideration is anything of value. Anything of value to the parties. So in some cases that could be cash. Other cases it could be a promise to not do something, right? I agree to not open up a competing business. Or it could be a pet rock. If you feel that's valuable to you, then the fourth step of sufficient consideration is anything of value to the parties. Now I want to go back to the mutual consent, the second element of contract formation. We said that's best evidenced by offer and acceptance, right? And that was acceptance under exact terms and conditions, right? But what if while you are negotiating back and forth, the seller hasn't told you everything? They're intentionally misleading you that the house is 2,000 square feet when it really is only 1,500. Perhaps you wouldn't have negotiated as high, you wouldn't have offered as much. So if this second element is subject to some type of fraud, right, an intentional lie, or maybe it's innocent. Maybe they believe the home is in the school district and they tell you and it ended up not being, but they just misrepresented, it wasn't an intentional lie. But that still might affect how much you were going to offer. Or maybe you agree to the acceptance because you're being pressured. I'm putting a lot of stress on you. I need this commission. You better sign this contract. So you feel duress. You feel this push by someone in power, authority, or guiding you to agree to something, even though it may not be in your best interest. So if you agree and there's fraud or misrepresentation or duress, we say that this contract now is voidable. Now, not void, meaning it never existed, but voidable in that should you choose to cancel it as a result of fraud, misrepresentation, duress, you could. But perhaps even though the seller lied to you, even though the seller told you it was 2,000 square feet and it was really only 1,500 square feet, you made such a good purchase that immediately the next month it was worth $200,000 more. You may say, you know what, I know I could void it, but I'm not going to. So we say this agreement is voidable by the injured party. But in this case, you maybe don't want to void it. But if you contract with someone who's not at least 18 years or older and doesn't meet one of the exceptions, then we say it's invalid. You don't have a contract because you can't contract with someone 18 years old. Or if you sign a contract to do something illegal, we say it's not a contract. It could be labeled as invalid or void, not a contract at all. So the four elements of contract formation, we need to have legal capacity, 18 years or older, mutual consent, we need to agree to something, a meeting of the minds, if you will. It needs to be a lawful purpose. And there must be sufficient consideration. And not what I may think is sufficient consideration, but what the parties believe is something of value.